The girl everyone called cursed and a burden quietly walked away. But the truth that came out of the bank locker the next morning shook the entire family. My name is Lorraine McKean. I am 38 years old, and last Sunday at 6:32 p.m. in the community hall of our church in Springfield, Ohio, my own sister laughed in front of everyone and said, "Laura has always been bad luck. Wherever she goes, she brings trouble with her." Honestly, she's been a burden from the very beginning. My fingers locked around the edge of a flimsy white plate. There were mashed potatoes on it, a scoop sliding toward the rim, but I couldn't taste a thing. The smell of roast beef and warm yeast rolls hung thick in the church hall, mixing with that faint lemon cleaner they always used on the folding tables. The old ceiling fans clicked every 3 seconds, a dry, tired sound like something about to give up. People laughed. Someone near the dessert table said, "Oh Diana, you're terrible," in that soft, forgiving tone people use when cruelty is dressed up as humor. I lowered my head. I could feel my pulse beating hard behind my teeth. I reached for my water glass, but my hand was so stiff it knocked against the table and made a sharp ringing sound. A few heads turned toward me. I pretended to fix the napkin in my lap. My sister Diana lifted the microphone again. She smiled like she was hosting a bridal shower. "We all know how much Mama did for her," she said, shaking her head gently. "But when luck's bad, what can you do?" My name is Lorraine McKean, and in that moment I was 38 years old, twice divorced, and in my family's eyes, the permanent problem. Before I go any further, pause for a second and hit like and subscribe, but only if this story is really touching something inside you. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I read every comment. Now let's go back 8 years to 6:14 in the morning when everything started to shift, slow and quiet. 8 years ago, I lived in a small 1,100 square foot house in the Northbrook neighborhood of Springfield, Ohio. Beige siding. A cracked driveway. A maple tree in the front yard that dropped leaves faster than I could rake them. I worked as a cybersecurity analyst. Yes, the same job my family called playing computer games. Diana would say, "Real work is nursing. Or teaching. What even is this computer thing you do?" At Thanksgiving 2016, we were all squeezed around Mama's dining table. The turkey was dry. The gravy had a skin on top. Diana lifted her wine glass and said, "Laura just hides behind a laptop. She has no idea how the real world works." I sliced a piece of turkey. The gravy ran across my plate and soaked into the stuffing. I didn't respond. I had learned early that silence survived longer than defense. In 2018, when I was making $62,000 a year and quietly paid $8,400 toward my father's hospital bills after his second surgery, no one mentioned it. Not at church. Not at Christmas. Not even in a private text. But in 2019, when my second marriage ended, Diana leaned back in her chair and said, "See? She drags bad luck with her everywhere." That line. "You've always been a burden and a problem." She said it in my kitchen on March 12, 2020. Mama was on the couch, staring at the TV that wasn't even turned on. The faucet in my sink dripped every 3 seconds. I was barefoot on the cold tile floor and I forced myself not to flinch. I was the one who fixed things in our family. When our cousin Rick took out a $42,380 business loan he couldn't repay, I spent hours on the phone with the bank negotiating a restructuring plan. When Diana's husband Greg messed up his tax filing and got hit with penalties, I corrected the documentation in 47 minutes and faxed it in before the deadline. No one ever called me capable. In 2022, Grandpa William passed away. He was 82. His house smelled like old cedar and pipe tobacco, like time had soaked into the walls. The carpet was worn thin in the hallway. The curtains were still the same cream ones Grandma bought in 1994. We were told Grandpa left everything to Diana because she's the responsible one. I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I stood by the kitchen counter and watched people carry casseroles in and out of the house like it was a potluck instead of a funeral. 3 weeks later, at 2:47 in the afternoon, my phone rang. The screen read, "Harrison and Cole Attorneys." "Am I speaking with Ms. Lorraine McKean?" an older male voice asked. "Yes. This is Charles Harrison. Your grandfather established a separate safety deposit box in your name. You'll need to come in personally to open it." My throat went dry. I leaned against the wall near my desk. The house felt smaller all of a sudden. Was there really something for me? I didn't tell Diana. The following week at 9:08 a.m., I walked into First State Bank. The vault area was cool and metallic. It smelled like old paper, iron, and a faint trace of machine oil. Rows of gray boxes lined the walls, each one identical, each one holding secrets. Charles Harrison was 71, thin and precise, with a navy tie and careful movements. He slid the key into locker number 147 and turned it. Inside was a thick file, a handwritten letter, and a small USB drive. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. Lorraine, if you are reading this, it means I'm gone. What I said publicly was not the truth. I did not leave you out as a test. I protected you. My chest tightened. Inside the file were bank statements. A trust fund totaling $620,000. Beneficiary, Lorraine McKean. Date established, 2014. The USB drive held something else. Emails. Diana's emails. Signed documents. A formal request she had submitted suggesting I was emotionally unstable and unfit to participate in family financial decisions. She had convinced Grandpa that presenting me as unreliable would allow smoother property transfers. I held the USB in my palm. It was cool plastic against my thumb. Could I fight? I sat on my kitchen floor that night, my phone pressed so tightly to my ear it hurt. Charles said, "Your grandfather recorded conversations. He kept copies of everything. He knew exactly what was being said." For 30 days I said nothing. I printed every email. I organized every transaction. I gathered 8 years of financial records. I made color-coded folders. I highlighted dates. August 17, 2018. April 3, 2019. November 22, 2021. From the outside I was the same Lorraine, quiet, head down, agreeable. Inside I was calculating. Pause for a second. Has your own family ever made you feel small in public? Write it in the comments. And if you want to know what happened the morning Diana saw the truth about that safety deposit box, stay with me. Diana hosted the next gathering herself. Sunday family lunch. She sent out group texts with smiley faces and little heart emojis. "We're doing a small memorial program for Grandpa," she wrote. The dining room was decorated with framed photos. A slideshow played on the TV. Diana stood at the front in a white dress, soft makeup, that careful tilt of her head she used when she wanted sympathy. "Grandpa trusted me," she said into the microphone. "I cared for him when it mattered." People clapped. I sat quietly. A mug of coffee cooled in front of me. I hadn't taken a single sip. Then I stood up. "May I read something?" I asked. A cough. A shuffle of chairs. Then silence. I opened Grandpa's letter. "Lorraine, I protected you. I mentioned the $620,000 trust. I placed printed copies of Diana's emails on the table, sliding them across the wood one by one. This is Diana's signature," I said. "Dated August 17, 2018. It states I am mentally unstable and incapable of making decisions." The color drained from her face. Greg looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Someone whispered, "What is this?" I read the final line from one of the emails. "If Lorraine is publicly established as unreliable, the property will transfer without objection." The temperature in the room changed. The same people who laughed at the church hall avoided my eyes. "This is a misunderstanding," Diana started. "No," I said calmly. "It's your email. Your signature." I didn't yell. I didn't insult her. I simply read. The next day Diana went to the bank. She learned that a significant portion of the estate was under legal review due to misrepresentation. An investigation opened. Within 3 months, Greg moved out. The church committee removed her from her leadership position. I didn't touch the trust money for myself. I used part of it to start a small cybersecurity consulting firm. 480 square feet of rented office space above a bakery downtown. I named it Clear Ledger Solutions. The first day I unlocked that office, it smelled like fresh paint and coffee drifting up from below. I bought a second-hand desk. A gray filing cabinet. A plant that almost died before I remembered to water it. I planted 6 maple trees in my backyard that spring. The soil clung to my hands. It smelled rich and alive. Every time I pressed a sapling into the ground, I felt something steady inside me. Mama came by one afternoon. She stood on the porch, her purse clutched in both hands. Her lips moved like she wanted to speak, but no sound came out. I made her tea. We sat at my kitchen table for 14 minutes without saying a word. The silence felt different this time. Not heavy. Just honest. I'm not perfect. Sometimes doubt creeps in late at night. Sometimes I ask myself if exposing everything was necessary. Then I read Grandpa's letter again. His handwriting is firm. Straight lines. No hesitation. Roots survive underground longer than anyone sees. They just need someone willing to clear away the dead weight and let the light in. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story reached you, press like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, have you ever set boundaries with your family? I read every one. Until the next story, take care of yourself. You deserve that.